Right. We are going to go through the paper and try to discuss the possible responses to the given questions. We try to justify why we are opting for those responses as the correct responses. And as usual, we understand that our geography paper 2 is still has the same format. We are comprised of three questions. Question number one, which is settlement geography, and question number two, economic geography of South Africa. Then question number three is geographical skills and techniques, which is our map work out of 30. Right, so we go into our paper and try to check on the questions and try to justify the proposed responses. Right, the first question, question number one, is based on rural and urban settlements. We are supposed to match column A with column B. Right, the first question is saying, dash refers to the location of a settlement in relation to the surrounding environment. When we are looking at the location of a settlement in relation to the environment, that is the situation of a settlement. That situation, if we are relating how a settlement relates to the surrounding environment, that is situation. Right. For a site, we are looking at the exact ground on which a settlement is established. Right. Moving on to the next question, number 1.1.2. The settlements located in areas where water supply is scarce. Right. What you must note here, we are relating settlements to water. And this situation, our water situation is such that water is a scarce resource in the area. So where must we establish a settlement if water is scarce? The only feasible way of establishing a particular settlement is to try to locate it as close as to the source of water. So that becomes a wet point settlement. Moving on to the next question. The sketch below illustrates a dash rural settlement pattern. Right, when we're talking of pattern, we are looking at how the housing units are arranged in the settlement. Are they closer to each other or they are apart from each other? So if we check in that instance, our farmsteads, they are just close to each other, which imply that it's a nucleated settlement. Number 114, an advantage generally associated with dispersed rural settlement pattern is, if we are located in a dispersed settlement, what's the likely advantage? The likely advantage is larger profits. Larger profits since the farmer have to utilize a larger piece of land on their own. And also there's no sharing of farming equipment there. So the farmer is most likely to make profits from operating in an isolated type of settlement. But also safety becomes a concern because there is less safety there because of the distance. Right, number 115, a Dutch settlement is dominated by primary activities. Primary activities, we see them happening in rural areas. Activities like farming, like mining, like fisheries, like forestry, quarrying, those are primary activities. They are part of the rural settlement. Right, moving on to the next question, number 116. The shape of the settlement in the sketch below is, if we try to check there, what kind of settlement? The settlement is happening along a river. And basically, you can see that the farmsteads are in a line along the river. So that is a linear. Right, moving on to the next question. A circular shaped settlement can be influenced by a circular shaped settlement. It can be influenced by a water point. We cannot have a river. A river, we've just seen it here. A river is going to give us a linear settlement, but when we are having a water point, it's most likely that the settlements are going to develop around the focal point, which is the water point. Right, then number 118, dash farming occurs when agriculture is practiced extensively. When we are practicing agriculture extensively, we are using very large pieces of land. That is large scale farming. Right, moving on to the next question. Our next question is question number 1.2. And question number 1.2, basically it's a multiple choice question where we're supposed to figure out the right responses from the given options. Right, the street pattern is commonly found in the central business district of old cities. If we check most of the old cities, they have a gridiron. A gridiron, you are saying some streets would be going in that direction, whilst others would be going in that direction, creating a grid. That is how most of the old cities were structured. That was the common pattern which was used in most of the old cities. Right. Then number 1.22, traffic congestion is associated with the dash pattern where roads converge at the city center. Where roads converge at the city center, this is typical of a radial pattern. We are saying major roads, they radiate from the CBD and also they converge in the CBD. So because of that influence of roads converging, it also implies that we have a problem of traffic congestion. Right, we'll move on to the next question. P, Q, and R, we are analyzing those patterns. A characteristic of street pattern P, if we check P, is this one, is that, right, streets intersect at right angles. I think you can see the intersections are right angles. They are a right angled way they intersect. Right, the street pattern R is characterized by street pattern R. We can see we have in that pattern we have circular roads happening. Like you can see, these roads are circular. They are circulating around the focal point of the settlement. Right, moving on to the next question. The advantages of street pattern Q are, if we check street pattern Q, what is most likely to be the advantage of that pattern? Q is planned irregular, right? So we can see that with that kind of street pattern, item number one, there is smooth flow of traffic, and also it can save on fuel because there's limited congestion because of the nature of the streets, and hence it also means there is limitation of fuel. So we take item number 2 and item number 3, which is it response B. Right, refer to the sketch of an urban profile below and answer the questions. The profile in the sketch is a dash view of a city. That is a side view. We are looking at the urban profile from the CBD going to the outskirts of the city. We are looking at the urban area from a side. Right, two characteristics of the urban profile in the sketch. What are the two features? Tallest buildings in the CBD, I think is evident. If you check our CBDs at the focal point here, and the tallest buildings, we find them here. And also, highest building density in the CBD. When we're looking at density of buildings, we are looking at how the buildings are spaced. In the CBD, because of limited space, the buildings tend to be as close to each other, and also because of high land values, we tend to maximize the usage of space in the CBD. So it's item 1 and item 3, which is response number B. Right, moving on to the next question. It's an extract which talks about land reform in South Africa. Right, we're not going to go through the extract. We are just going to go through the questions and try to figure out where to get the responses from. Right, number 131, it says, quote evidence from the extract to show that there has been progress with land reform. Right, if we go to our extract, it says, the progress, it says here, the progress made is better than what politicians claim. So it shows that there's progress there. Land reform is actually succeeding in South Africa, and there's progress which has been realized through the practice of land reform aspects of redistribution, restitution, and land tenure. Right. So our response, we quote it from there. The progress made is better than what our politicians claim. Right, moving on to the next question, number 1.3.2. Refer to the diagram and name the program of land reform which has resulted in 6.68 million hectares of land being returned to the rightful owners. If we come here, we can see that it's 6.68 million hectares of land which has been returned to the rightful owners. And when we are talking of returning back land to the rightful owners, we are looking at land restitution. So our correct response for this one here, number 132, is the policy of land restitution. Right. We move on to the next question. According to the extract, name the economic principle that has been used for land redistribution. Right, we go to our extract, we find it says, for the first 10 years of land reform program, the government applied a market-assisted economic principle of land redistribution. That is the principle that has been applied, market-assisted economic principle. Market-assisted economic principle. Right, moving on to the next question, number 133. Number 134. Describe the challenges associated with the land redistribution principle being used. What are the challenges which are associated with the market-assisted economic principle? Right, the challenge that we have there, we can talk of challenges like we have a challenge with post-settlement support. Right, what we are talking about here when we're talking of post-settlement support, we are saying the farmers who would have been allocated the land, they need post-settlement support. They need what we call post, that is number 1.3.4. Settlement support. They need to be supported with the resources that will make them run or utilize the land effectively. But if there's no such support, it means automatically those farmers might be facing some challenges because of lack of support from the government. And also we can talk of market distortions. We are looking at market-oriented. Here we're looking at market-assisted economic principle. So we are focusing on establishing a market for our products. So we have market distortions. Right, market distortions, we are saying the prices of commodities, mainly the primary products, they are very volatile prices. And hence it makes it difficult for the farmers to succeed in some other situation. Like we look at a situation whereby we have a good harvest in a given season, automatically there will be more supply related to the level of demand for the primary products. And that is going to deflate the price, is going to force the price to go down. And for that reason, it makes it difficult for the farmer now to effectively plan and implement successful measures in terms of enhancing their farming business. And also remember, farming is also affected by natural disasters for that matter. Then you can also look at ideological differences. It's another challenge. Ideological differences. Different people have got different perceptions to life. And as a result, we can have disputes arising from the differences in ideology. The way land reform is being carried out in South Africa, some people are not happy with it, or they wanted it to happen the other way around. So because of that differences in ideology, that will make it be a challenge to the principle of market-assisted economic principle to land reform. Right, moving on to the next question, we want to check on question number 1.3.6. Suggest how land reform can provide economic security to people in rural areas. Land reform, how can it provide economic security? We are saying, how can people in rural areas be secured economically? How can they be sure of a sustained way of life through land reform? Right. But before we look at that, I think we've skipped a question. Explain two possible social factors that delay land restitution in South Africa. Right, number 135, we want also to look at it. We want to look at possible social factors that delay land restitution. Giving back land to the rightful owners is not happening at the pace that we expect it to be happening. What are the challenges that are delaying the process of transferring land to the rightful owners, to those who were disadvantaged by the leaders of apartheid, who were disadvantaged by the practices of segregation through apartheid? So, the possible factors there that might be delaying, that is number 135. You can talk of corruption. Corruption is one of the major concerns in the operations of the government. Officials, they tend to misuse resources and they tend to use their authority to misguide people and use state resources for their own benefit. So it's a very serious challenge, which is delaying land restitution because of corruption. And you can also talk of the complex nature. You can talk of the complex nature of land claims. Establishing the rightful owner sometimes is very difficult because we are talking of apartheid here. Some people lost their land some years back, and tracing the roots of the exact owners of that land might be a serious challenge because these things have happened now over a relatively longer period of time. And we need to try to check on the nature of the land claims so that we don't allocate land to the wrong person claiming to be the owner of the land. We must give it back to the rightful owners. So it's also a complex issue. Then you can also look at community disputes. Some communities are also having disputes over the allocation of land. Some are claiming that the communal land was previously theirs. Some are also claiming some other, in some other direction. And at the end of the day, those disputes, they also need to be resolved before we can effectively institute land reform and land restitution. Then we can also look at other things like lack of capacity. The government needs people to implement these measures. For example, staff. There's need for people to implement these measures of land restitution. They need to go on the ground. Is the government having capacity to do that? Is limited. So that lack of capacity is also a challenge that is also hindering the progress of land restitution. Then moving on to our last question, number 136. 136 is saying, suggest how land reform can provide economic security. Right, to the people in rural areas. We can talk of an argument of addressing historical injustices. Right, for that matter, we know that the history was not in favor of the African men. The African man was disadvantaged in terms of the legislations which were enacted by then. So we want to address that. We want to address those injustices and ensure that there is equitable land ownership amongst our community members. So by addressing that, we are ensuring that people have got a way of sustaining economically in the rural areas. Then we can also look at fostering sustainable agriculture. Land reform allows for farmers to engage or to practice sustainable farming that will ensure that they have a way of life and are guaranteed that they have security in the rural areas. And also we can talk of economic opportunities. Like with land reform, it has created jobs for people in different sectors, in agriculture directly and in other related industries to agriculture. So economic opportunities are also made available. And we can also talk of a reduction of poverty in the rural areas. The living standards of people are gradually improving because of having access to land. So we can also argue along those lines. Right, then we move on to our next question. Right, the next question is referred to the sketch below, showing land use zones and land use in an urban area. Right, those are the land use zones. What is an urban land use zone? Right, that's a question that you must try to define geographically as a concept. Right, that is number 141. When you're looking at an urban land use zone, we are saying it's a specific area. It's a specific area within a city or a town, or within a town designated for a particular activity. Or for a particular function. That's a land use zone. We are saying it's a specific area in the urban area. It's a specific zone within the urban area where there is a designated special activity or special function that is supposed to be undertaken in that given area. For example, we talk of residential areas. Residential areas are meant to accommodate the urban dwellers, and they come in different dimensions in terms of levels of income. We talk of high income areas, we talk of middle income, we talk of low income areas. That is with land use zones of residential. We can also talk of industrial land use zones where we are dealing with industrial activity. We have a section for light industries, we have a section for heavy industries in the urban area. Those are specific land use zones. The area is being specifically used for a designated purpose, or we are using the land for a specific function in the urban area. Right, we move on to the next question. The next question is question number 1.4.2. Why do different land use zones occur? Why do we have different land use zones? Why can't we just use the urban area for one purpose? We develop industries in the whole urban area. We use that for industrial manufacturing. Why do we have different land use zones? Right. We can say to accommodate different activities. In an urban area, there are supposed to be different activities that must happen. So we cannot have one land use zone because there are different activities that are supposed to be undertaken. We need space for residential areas. We need space for industries. We need space for the green belts. We need space. All those functions, they need to be accommodated in the same urban area. So for that reason, we end up having different land use zones. And also the other reason, we can talk of protection of natural resources. For example, we talk of the green belts, we talk of recreational parks. They are meant to protect natural resources. We want to protect the vegetation in the urban area. That is why we have the green belts, and also that is why we have the recreational grounds and the recreational parks. Then we can also talk of to achieve a desirable living environment. Right, the reason why you tend to find that there are some activities which are not compatible, like for example, we cannot have the low income area, the high income area being closer to the industries. It's not compatible for environmental reasons. People who afford, they cannot stay in areas where it's noisy and in areas where there's congestion, in areas where there is a lot of disorder. For that reason, we want to maintain a desirable living environment. That is why we tend to segregate zones of land use in the urban area. Right, we move on to the next question. Number 12143. Right, number 143, give two factors evident in the sketch map that influence the location of high income residential area. Right, we are looking at high income residential area. What are the factors that could have promoted or if you check on our sketch here, we see that high income is represented by these blocks here, by this grid shape. So if we try to locate it, we tend to find that this grid shape is here. So we want to try to identify the factors here which have influenced the location of that income, high income area. Right, we must use what we are seeing on the map and try to justify why that area is located on that particular part. Right, if we can check there, you are seeing that there is a transport route here which links the area, is one factor. Transport route. Right, what else can we justify? If we see this is the rural urban fringe and it's just located close to the rural urban fringe, for what reason did it develop there? We talk of a health environment. Because we are now in the outskirts of the urban area. So we tend to have fresh air there, we tend to have a health environment on the outer part. And also if we check, we can justify that there is space for expansion. Remember, high income areas, they take considerable bigger spaces of land compared to middle and low income. They need more space to expand and build well up-to-date structures. So there's also evidence of availability of space in the outer part of the built-up in the urban area. Right, we move on to the next question. Refer to the transition zone at B. Right, this B here is the transition zone. This B here. When we're talking of the transition zone, we are saying that is an area where activities change. We are coming from the CBD going to the outer part of the CBD. We have a certain area which we call the zone of transition or the zone of decay, where we have mainly unmaintained buildings and most of them illegally occupied as we move out of the CBD going to the outskirts. Right. So the question is saying, state one characteristic of this zone, the transition zone. What are the features of the transition zone? Right, you can look at dilapidated buildings, In most instances, we're saying those buildings are old and unmaintained buildings. And also, if you try to check, we can also justify that the area is a transition. There is a change of activity from commercial activities going to residential. So there's a transition there. As you're moving from the CBD, we are having commercial activities dominating in the CBD. But as we get to the transition zone, we are now having a change in the functions or in the land use and is transiting from commercial going to residential. And for those reasons, we can safely say those are the features of the zone of transition. Right. Moving on to the next question. Why does the transition zone not completely surround land use zone A? Why is this transition zone not completely enclosing? You can see there's 1, 2, 3, but we're supposed to have it in concentric circles, but it's not enclosing the CBD. Why is it we have such a situation? Right, 144A, I'll illustrate it separately. Right, that is 144. I'll indicate it here. A. Right, if we try to check them, we can see that we can argue on the history of the city. The original plan of the city sometimes does not allow for the transition zone to completely enclose the CBD. And also, because of CBD expansion, the CBD, in some instances, it expands into the transition zone, and those buildings are renovated and they are made into commercial use. So in some other areas, you tend to find that the zone of transition is not evident because of CBD expansion. The CBD will be invading what we call invasion and succession of functions in the urban area. Right. Then we can also talk of transport routes. Transport routes. They can alter the land use. E.g., for example, a railway line might promote industries. So as a result, we don't have the transition zone because of the influence of the transport route, which has changed the land use in that direction. And also for the other reason, we can talk of urban sprawl. Because of continued uncontrolled growth of cities and towns, sometimes you tend to find that people are now staying in the informal settlements and they are no longer staying in the zone of transition, most of them. And for that reason, we can end up not having the zone of transition completely encircling the CBD because some people who are supposed to be occupying those big buildings which are dilapidated, they opt to stay in the informal settlements because of uncontrolled growth of cities and towns. Right, we'll move on to the next question. What is the importance of green belts in urban settlements? Right, what we call the green belts, we are looking at vegetated areas. Why is it important that we have vegetation introduced in the urban area? Right, we can say it improves water and air quality. It's one factor. Because of the trees, they tend to purify the air that we breathe and also tend to assist in the purification of water in the urban area. Then we can also talk of reducing the urban heat island. Right, the urban heat island is lessened. The effect of high temperatures in the urban area is lessened by the green belts, and also can now use it for flood control. And you can also use that for outdoor recreation. Outdoor recreation, we can also use that. And also can talk of, for the sake of biodiversity. Right, those are some of the reasons that you can use to justify the importance of green belts in urban areas. Right, moving on to the next question. Why is the location of low income residential area an advantage and a disadvantage for residents of this area? Why is the location of the low income residential area an advantage and a disadvantage? Let's try to analyze and see. Right, if we check our low income is here. Right. So for that reason, we are saying this area is an area of low income. So the question is saying why is it an advantage and also why it is a disadvantage. Right, when we're talking in terms of advantages, we can try to relate the location of that particular low income area to the industries. We are having a heavy industrial area here, which is just next to the low income area. So it can be an advantage and it can be a disadvantage at the same time for the people staying in the low income residential area. So for that reason, we relate to the industries and try to justify how it comes as an advantage for them and also how it can come as a disadvantage to the people in the low income residential area. So that is number 146. I'll just try to highlight it here. 146. Right. When we're looking at advantages, we are saying it's closer to employment opportunities. Employment opportunities in the industrial area, in the heavy industrial area, which is also a cost saving for them. If people are employed in the heavy industries, they are just closer to the low income residential area. And then it's a cost saving to them in terms of transportation if they were working somewhere far. Then a disadvantage, we talk of negative implications of having industries closer, like talk of noise pollution. Remember, heavy industrial activities, they cause a lot of pollution. Like you can also talk of the dangers of air pollution in the area. It's a disadvantage. They are exposed to air pollution, which is ultimately a negative implication on their lives, and that might create some other challenges or some other problems. So if you look at it from that perspective, you can safely conclude that it's beneficial for the low income residential area, and also it has a negative implications on the residents of that particular area. Right, we move on to the next question. We are done with question number 146. We move on to question 1.5. Right, it's an extract on congestion in Cape Town. We are going to analyze the questions and try to figure out the correct responses. Right, according to the extract, approximately how many hours did Cape Town commuters waste in 2023 due to traffic congestion? We go to our extract. Wasted an average of 83 hours. Our response is here. Then how does traffic congestion negatively impact on the economy of Cape Town? How does traffic congestion impact negatively? Right, we can talk of negatively. Traffic congestion will cause increased fuel costs. That is going to negatively impact on the economy. People are now paying more for fuel because of traffic congestion. Then also it can cause reduced productivity. A worker has to spend a lot of time on the road because of traffic congestion. By the time they reach to their workplace, they are already tired because they've overspent time traveling. And also, the stress of traveling in congested roads, on congested roads, is actually a demotivator to the productivity of a worker. Right, and also if we check, we can also talk of reduced or lost work hours. And because of that reason, we also have an effect of increased risk of accidents. And how does that impact? It also impact on the emergency services. We're looking at the emergency services here. They are always supposed to be in action because of increased risk of accidents because of traffic congestion. And also can talk of other things like job losses. There's potential job losses because of traffic congestion. Right, move on to the next question. Why would the improvement in public transport not benefit all commuters? If we try to improve public transportation, it is going to benefit some, but some are not going to benefit. Why is it like that? That there are some people who are going to benefit and some who are not going to benefit. We look at aspects like geographical location. Some people cannot easily access the improved infrastructure because of their physical location. And for that reason, they cannot benefit. And also we can talk of access to the routes. Some people would have limited access to the developed routes, and hence they cannot benefit from that. And also, we can talk of lack of terminals. Sometimes it's a challenge. If you want to use a public bus, you have to access this from a designated terminal. But sometimes you tend to find that there are some areas without proper terminals, or where the terminals are far spaced away from each other. And people who tend to stay in between, they cannot access those terminals. And at the end, even though there's public transportation, they can still not benefit. Then we can also talk of safety concerns. Some people, they feel like it's not very safe to use public transportation. If, for example, if you have valuables, the risk of you getting to lose your valuables is more of a concern. Or even some people do assess public transportation as not very safe compared to their private vehicles. And also, we can talk of private vehicle dependence. There are people who depend completely on their private vehicles. They are not interested in accessing public transportation. And also, lastly, we can talk of commuting times. Like if you are using public transportation, like train, there are most instances where you find that the timetable might not be aligned to your time of work. The train maybe is too early, and then the next train is too late. Your time of work is in between. Then because of that reason, you cannot effectively benefit from that public transport. It's either you have to go to work very early and find something to do there, waiting for your starting time, or you have to go late and face the consequences. So because of that commuting time, it poses as a challenge to some people not benefiting from our public transportation. Right. Then we move on to our last question. Paragraph of 8 lines suggests infrastructural developments associated with roads that municipal of Cape Town can put in place to reduce traffic congestion. What can the municipality do in relation to the roads so that they reduce the risk of traffic congestion on the roads? Right, I'll just highlight here and try to discuss briefly. Right, for that reason, we are saying what needs to be done on the public road infrastructure. Right, number 154. We can talk of expansion of existing road network. We can expand the existing road network. There are some road networks that need to be furthered to reach other places. And also, we need to ensure that there is access to the road network. So we can expand the existing, or we can also add more capacity of the roads. Like we add extra lanes to accommodate extra vehicles on the road so that we limit traffic congestion. Then we can also look at development of new routes. We can try to come out with new routes that we need to deal with and also limit congestion on the roads. Then we can also talk of what we call dynamic lane assignments. Lane assignments, whereby, for example, we designate a specific lane for public transport only, so that at least there's limited congestion. Private vehicles, they will be using their own lanes, while it's public buses, they will also need to use their own lanes. Then what can also be done? We can also talk of other developments like introducing the smart traffic lights. the smart traffic lights. For a reason or the other, sometimes the traffic congestion is caused by non-functional traffic lights at some point in time. If the traffic light is not functioning, we cannot effectively control the flow of traffic, and apparently there's going to be congestion on that particular area. And as a result, we need to find alternative ways of using sustainable energy so that we have continued access to traffic lights and apparently regulate the flow of traffic on our major roads. Right, that takes us to the end of question number 1. I think we have done justice as part of the settlement question and urban issues. Right, we move on to economic geography of South Africa. The first question is a multiple choice question, right? Dash is when a country is sufficient and nutritious. If a country has got sufficient and nutritious food, we say it is food secure. There is food security in that country. Then a negative economic factor affecting production of food in a country is, we want to look at economic factor. Right. Lack of capital, that's the correct. Those other ones, they are pest and disease, it's natural or physical. Droughts, it's physical. Technology and mechanization is not a negative factor. Right. Moving on to the next question. 213. An advantage of planting genetically modified crops to improve food security is, what is the benefit of using GMOs? Right. There is greater resistance to pests and diseases. Right. Number 214. A social advantage of food secure countries is that we want to look at social. An advantage to society. Right. They have reduced poverty. Right. Moving on to the next question. The province with the highest percentage of food insecurity in South Africa, we just check. If we see Limpopo is having 25, followed by KZN with 20, and also Eastern Cape with 20%. So the province with the highest percentage of food insecurity, that is Limpopo. Right, the next question. Gauteng has a low percentage of food insecurity because of increased production from dash farmers and a higher rate and a higher dash rate. Right, there is large scale and high employment rate. Item 2 and item 3, they are on option A. Provinces where the core industrial regions are located account for dash of the food insecurity in South Africa. You need to apply the knowledge here of your areas with core industrial regions. We have 4 regions of interest. The first region is Gauteng with the Gauteng P.WV. Then we also have the KZN, which is the Durban Pinetown. Then the other 2 is Western Cape. And we also have Eastern Cape core industrial region. Right, for that reason, we check Gauteng has got 8%, KZN has got 20, Western Cape has got 2%, and Eastern Cape has got 20. So if we check this, 8, 28, 30, 50. Right, we'll move on to the next question. Match the statements with one of the types of industries in the list below. We're looking at the types of industries. Right, the first one is number 2.21, associated with less pollution and is not capital intensive. This is a light industry. Then located close to the customer. Whenever we're talking of customers, we're looking at the market. This is market oriented. Then may be located anywhere and is widely distributed. May be anywhere and is widely distributed. This is ubiquitous. Then associated with high levels of pollution and occupy large spaces, that is a heavy industry. Located close to raw materials that are bulky. Raw materials that are bulky, we have raw material oriented. For example, we talk of our sugar manufacturing plant. Location is not determined by raw materials or markets. That is a footloose. Footloose industries, they can move strategically. They are not tied to the source of raw material or to the market. They can locate anyway. It's footloose. Then located where goods are transferred from one mode of transport to another. This is a break of bulk. It's a break of bulk industry. Then lastly, shoe manufacturing is an example of this type of industry. Shoe manufacturing constitutes part of the light industries. Right, that brings us to the end of question number 2.2. We move on to question 2.3. Beef production in South Africa. It's an extract which is explaining the situation of beef production in South Africa. Right, the first question is saying, why according to the extract and graph? According to the extract and graph, which province is the lowest beef production in South Africa? We just have to compare our statistics here. If we check Gauteng, it's the one with 2%. So automatically this is the one, it's the lowest, it's our Gauteng. Give a reason for the low production of this province. Why is it that Gauteng is contributing less to beef production in South Africa? Right, the problem with Gauteng, you can talk of urbanization. It's an urbanized province where most people are staying in the towns. And hence, they are not focusing much on primary activities. The core focus is in manufacturing and not in agriculture. It's an urbanized province. And also, you can talk of it being a highly populated province in the country. It also implies that there's limited grazing space. And hence, we cannot keep very large herds because of limited grazing space. It's populated, is highly populated, and there's no such space to use for extensive grazing. Then we can also talk of other factors like drought. It's very prone to drought in some instances, and also prevalent diseases like foot and mouth. They are common, and hence it gives a limitation to production. Right, suggest two human-made factors that have caused a difference in the amount of beef production in the various provinces. We want human-made factors here that contribute towards the differences or the variances in the levels of beef production. Right, some provinces have got high production because of adoption of technology. They have now adopted new methods of agriculture which are more productive through the usage of technology. For that reason, they have got higher productivity in terms of beef production. Then you can also look at new initiatives in disease control. Farmers can be exposed to new ways of disease control using new treatments for different diseases, and hence their level of productivity will also be high. Then you can also look at infrastructure. Because of the benefit of infrastructure, some other provinces are producing more because they have easy access to infrastructure and also market access. The bigger the market, it also means the higher the productivity in that particular area. And also you can look at production methods or production systems. Some provinces, they dominate with extensive, and we know output in extensive farming is comparably lower, while in some, they engage in intensive methods where there is high output. So those methods, they also determine the level of productivity in a given province, and they do affect. Right. Number one, number two, three, four. In a paragraph of approximately 8 lines, explain the importance of contribution of beef production to the South African economy. We want to look at how beef production is impacting on the economy of South Africa. That is number two, three, four. Right. We can talk of job creation. It has impacted positively in job creation, either directly in agriculture, in beef farming, or indirectly in other related industries. Then, besides job creation, we can also look at infrastructure development. Infrastructure has been developed because of farming. The farmers need to access the farming areas. They also need to access the market, and hence there is enhancement of development of infrastructure. Then you can talk of raw material. For industry, we can also access some beef products which are used as raw materials for industry. And also we can look at development of related industries, industries that are related to agriculture. For example, the fertilizer manufacture. For example, we can look at the pest sides and the manufacturers of the farm implements. They benefit from a developed beef industry, and they also benefit indirectly, and their activities are also going to be enhanced. Then you can also look at food security in the country. People are now assured of food security, and also not forgetting, we talk of nutrition, which is a key element. And we can also look at export earnings. And lastly, but not the least, we can talk of tax revenue. Right, those are some of the benefits. We expand on that to create our paragraph. And we are not saying we are limited to that. There are the other benefits. But for the sake of our discussion, we've just decided to focus on those ones. Right, let's move on to the next question. Our next question is question number um, 2.4, based on the Southwestern Cape Core Industrial Region. Right, what percentage contribution does the Southwestern Cape Core Industrial Region make to the GDP of South Africa? This is extraction. To the GDP, it produces 9.8% of the GDP. So our response is 9.8%. How does foreign investment increase the Southwestern Cape for industrial region's contribution to the GDP? We are looking at foreign investments. Foreign investments, how do they contribute towards the contribution of that region's GDP? Right, foreign investments, we are saying there is more job creation. And we know well that if people are having incomes, they are going to spend, and that expenditure contributes part of the domestic spending by people. And we can also talk of the foreign investors bringing in the multiplier effect. The money that they spend is going to create more money as it circulates in the economy. The money that they inject into the circular flow is going to create more money. And that is the multiplier effect, which is going to affect positively on the industrial region and its contribution. Then we can also look at other things like contribution of tax revenue. The foreign investors are supposed to contribute tax revenue, and that tax revenue is going to be used productively by the government. And we can also look at other things like they also contribute towards infrastructure, development. Yeah, those are some of the factors that you can talk about when you look at the foreign investments. Right, number 243. Why is investment in light industries common in the Southwestern Cape core industrial region? Why is it that they focus more on light industrial activities? Right. We can say because of the resources available. The resources available allows mainly for light industries to develop. You can give examples of the resources that we find in that core industrial region and relate them to how they contribute towards light industrial activities. Right. And also we can talk of lower energy needs. Because of energy crisis, we know well that the country is having some challenges with energy. So with light industrial activities, there's lower energy needs, and hence it makes it viable to engage in um, light industrial activities. And then we can also talk of less investment requirements. The light industries, they require less investment in terms of capital. So it makes it slightly easier for investors to focus on the light industries because of those given factors. Right, moving on to the next question. How does the creation of jobs in the Southwestern Cape core industrial region impact positively on the people in the region? How are people going to benefit from the creation of jobs? Definitely, we are going to talk of they are going to have a source of income, which is a benefit to basic life. And then we're also going to talk of reduced poverty. People who are gainfully employed, they have got a reduction in poverty. Then we can also look at people who help benefit from development of skills. As they perform their activities that they do in the industries, they also have skills development. Then you can also look at improved living standards. All right, that is basically how people are going to benefit from the creation of jobs in that industrial region. Right, moving on to the next question. Explain the positive impact of road infrastructure and harbors. Refer to the sketch map on the industrial growth in the region. Right, why is it that important that we have the harbors and the roads? Right, this harbor here, the main importance of the harbor is exportation of the final products and also importation of, for example, raw materials or industrial implements which are required. So for the harbor, we benefit through the exportation and also importation happening at the harbor. Then if we try to check our roads, we have the N1 automatically and N2. These are national roads. We have N7. These, they are important because they link to the market. And by the market here, we are looking at the domestic market and also the regional market. Then we can also talk of access to raw materials through the roads. The roads can also be beneficial by allowing access to labor supply. People can travel along those routes, go and work in the core industrial region from different areas. So for that reason, you can justify that that is the benefit of having those roads and the harbors. Right, that was question number 2.4.5. Then going to the next question, 2.5 is a question on the informal sector. Right, the first question is saying, quote evidence from the extract that trading in the informal sector is high in South Africa. Right, our evidence, we find it here in South Africa, where there are over 2 million informal businesses. This is our evidence. We have over 2 million informal businesses. Why does student A disagree with student B on why trading in informal sector is high in South Africa? Why are they disagreeing? Right. It's saying, if you check, why is trading in the informal sector high in South Africa? And then the teacher is posing a question. What is the economic factor that causes trading in the informal sector to be high? And then learner B rather is saying products are expensive. And then learner B is saying, I don't agree. So basically here, from the translation of what these learners are saying, one is arguing that products are expensive. And products are expensive here, we are relating to the formal market. That is why the informal sector is thriving. It's because products on the formal market are expensive. So why are they not agreeing? I don't agree. Why doesn't she agree? We can argue that she doesn't agree. But however, the informal sector, we can argue that the informal sector sells at cheaper prices than the formal. The informal sector sells at a cheaper price than the formal sector. That is why they thrive. If they were selling at the same price with the formal sector, they wouldn't be succeeding. Or if they were selling at a higher price than the formal sector, they wouldn't succeed well. For the reason being why they are able to sell products at cheaper prices, they are using family labor in most instances. They don't hire the labor, or it's a person doing their own business. And for the very same reason, again, they do not pay tax. Remember, tax is a cost of production which must be accommodated when you are charging the price. And for the other reason, we can also argue that they do not pay rentals where they operate. Usually they operate on the streets where they just operate for free. And so for those reasons, they are able now to supply the products at a cheaper price compared to the formal market. So this learner A, who is disagreeing, is actually disagreeing to a justified fact. Right. We move on to the next question. Give 2 ways in which the informal trading has a positive social impact on the lives of people. Right, how does it impact the informal trading on the social lives of people? Right, people are impacted by a source of living. People are now able to make a living out of informal trading, which is a positive impact, or people are going to get an income. And also, if you check, there's an effect of reduced poverty. Through informal trading, people are able to make a life and they are going to become better off. And also on their way of life, we can talk of the informal sector being a way of self-job creation, which is beneficial to the individual who is doing their own business, who is doing their own informal trading. Right, that is the first part. Then 254. Why is the government forced to use trade in the informal sector as a strategy to address unemployment? Right, if the government is now accounting for unemployment figures, they now consider people who are self-employed as part of the employed people. Why are they doing that? Why are they treating people who are self-employed and who are not formally registered as part of the people who are employed in the economy? That's the question. So if we try to justify that, we can justify it to the fact that this is 254, right? We can say, why is the government justifying that? Because there's limited job creation in the economy. For that reason, the government is failing to create enough jobs for the people. And for that reason, again, for them not to account for high unemployment figures, they treat people who are in the informal sector, in the informal trading, as people who are employed because of limitation of job creation. And you can also justify that because there is slow economic growth in the country. The economy is growing slowly, and hence there is no incentive for the government to treat those people as unemployed because already they are gainfully having a source of income. Right. Um, and also, if you check on the informal sector, on the informal trading, you can also justify that the informal can also be a market for the formal, and hence it works in that direction to enhance the working of the formal market. Right. Describe the poor conditions under which informal traders work. The informal traders are exposed to harsh conditions in their operations. What are some of the poor conditions? Right, the poor conditions that we can talk about. We can talk of harsh weather. Since they operate in the open, in most instances, they are exposed to harsh weather conditions. On one day, it's raining. On the other day, it's very hot. The other day, it's windy. They are exposed to all those conditions. Right, we can also look at lack of facilities. As they operate on the streets, there's usual limitation of facilities, basic facilities. For example, water provision. It's a poor conditions that they operate in. Then we can also look at the other condition. We can look at municipal police. Usually the municipal police are brutal on the informal traders. And also confiscation of their wares. Sometimes the municipal police, they confiscate the wares of the informal traders, which is a harsh conditions of operation as they work. Right. Those are some of the conditions. They are limited to that. They are not limited to that. You can come out with other harsh conditions on the way in which the informal traders operate. Right. Going to the last question. Explain the negative economic impact of the increasing number of informal traders in South Africa. The increasing number of informal traders, what negative economic impact is it going to have? Right. If we try to analyze this, we try to look at tax revenue. There's going to be reduced tax revenue. For the reason being, these businesses are not registered and they do not pay tax. And for that reason, it's a loss to the government in terms of tax revenue. The more the business is trading informally, the less the tax revenue that the government gains. Then you can also look at uneven competition. Mainly with formal businesses, with the formal sector. There's going to be an unbalanced competition between the two. Since those ones have got lower cost of doing business, they can afford to sell their products at a relatively lower price, and hence they can disadvantage the working of the formal sector. And also, we can say it can hinder economic development. Mainly for the reason being, they lack access to capital. The informal businesses, they usually lack access to capital, and for that reason, they cannot effectively expand their businesses. They will keep operating as small businesses, and for that reason, they cannot contribute effectively towards economic development. That is going to negatively impact. We need bigger businesses that employ large numbers of people that contribute towards the level of GDP and tax revenue, so that we achieve economic development. The government has to use that money for development purposes, for infrastructure development. But if we have more informal settlements, we are going to hinder our level of economic development. Right, and we can also look at a lack of social protection. Mainly, you are looking at the unemployment benefits, things like pensions. They are not there in the informal businesses as they operate, so it's a disadvantage that a person works and they do not get benefits, like benefits which are intended for the sustenance of life of an individual who was once working. Right, that takes us to the end of section A. We move on to section B, which is our question on geographical skills and techniques. Our question is based on the map on George. And like as usual, I advise you to read the map information. You check on the map information and try to familiarize yourself with the area before you attempt the questions. Right. That is the general information on George. And moving on to our question. Right. The first question on map skills and calculations. Right. Refer to the orthophoto map 311. The height at 6 in block C1 is dash meters. Right. We check on our map to try and identify clues of height. We want to use our orthophoto map. We want the height at 6 in block C1. Our block C1 is A, B, C, and number 1. This is our 6. We want to figure out the height of this contour line here. That is what is required by the question. We want to figure out the height of that contour line. Right. So if we are to check on that and we are to justify how we check the height of that particular place on 6, we need to check on the labeled contour lines. The labels are here. If we check closely, I'll try to enlarge the map. This is 195, and this is 190, and this is 185, and this is 180. Right, so if we check, we can determine the nature of the landscape there, the topography of that area. It's an area which is sloping downwards, going to the western side. If we are checking these values here, our values are decreasing going to the western side. And we know well that our contour interval for the topography, for the orthophoto map is 5 meters. We apply the contour interval to find the height of this line, number 6. So it's a difference of 5. 195 minus 5, we get 190. 190 minus 5, we get 185. 185 minus 180 minus 180 minus 5, we get 180. Then 180 minus 5, we get this contour line. So our correct response is 175, which is A. Our contour line is a height of 175 meters. Calculate the average gradient from 7 in block D4 to 8 in block 8-4 on the orthophoto map. Map distance between 7 and 8 on the orthophoto map is 10.3 centimeters. And use the formula VI over HE. Right, I will do the calculation and try to figure out how we are getting those calculations. Right, our question is based on the orthophoto map. We are referring to the two places, place number 7 and place 8. Right, our 8 is here and our 7 is here. Those are two spot heights. So by mere looking at the spot heights, we can check their heights. So we are saying the smaller height, we subtract it from the bigger height in meters. This is 209 and this is 204. So we are saying on our height, we are saying 209 meters less 204 meters. So the difference here from 204 to 209, it gives us 5 meters. So our 5 meters, that is now our vertical interval. Our vertical interval in meters is 5 meters. Then we now have to calculate our horizontal equivalence. Right, our horizontal equivalence, we are told the distance has been measured for us. We don't need to remeasure that because it's there. We are told that the distance in centimeters is 10.3 centimeters. Right, this is an extract from a topographic map, and we know well that our topographic map is to a scale of 1:, or orthophoto is to a scale of 1:10,000. So if you want to do conversions here, we can do direct conversions on that particular measurement and convert our measurement to the required units of measurement of meter measurement. Right, so what we need to do there, we multiply the distance by the map scale. So directly, if you want to convert your map distance to meters, you can simply say 10.3, you multiply it by 100 meters. So this is going to give you 1,030 meters. So this is now our horizontal equivalence. So with this value and this value here, we are now supposed to get back to our formula. Our formula is saying VI over HE. Our VI is in meters. Our HE is also in meters. We can create a fraction with 5 meters over 1,030 meters. The meters will cancel each other. What we need to do here, our gradient must be expressed as a ratio with a numerator equal to 1. So what we must do with the numerator is we must reduce it to unit by dividing by itself. We divide by the value of the numerator. Right, so what we need to do, we are now saying 5 divided by 5 and 1,030, we also divide it by 5. So we are making this one equal to 1. And whatever result we are going to get here is going to be our denominator of the ratio. So if we divide 1,030 by 5, if you do it correctly, you will get 206. So this as a ratio, our gradient is 1:2, 206. That is how you get to your final calculation. Right, then we move on to the next question. Complete the grid reference of the trigonometrical station 114 in block A5 on the topographic map. Right, what you need to just do here, I'll give you the skills of how you must do it and how you can estimate. Right, what you can do is your values of degree latitude and degree longitude are already given on the map reference. You don't need to stress about those ones. They are already there on the map reference. We know well that the reference there is the one that counts as the lines of latitude and the lines of longitude. So if we check, the extract is 33 22. So automatically it means our 33 is there and our 22 longitude is there. So what we need to do now is to try and find the value of, let's go to block A5. We want to find the value of this trig station here. I'll try to slightly enlarge so that it's more visible. Right, our trig station is here. So what you can do if you want to ascertain the value of minute for latitude and minute value for longitude. Unfortunately, for longitude is already provided, but for latitude, you have to find it out, but it's there on the map. You check your lines of latitude here. Your lines of latitude are provided. This is the degree value, 33 of latitude, and your minute value is here. And each consecutive line will be adding as we go to the south. It means this is 55 minutes to the south latitude. The next line here is going to be 56. The next one is going to be 57 minutes going to the south. Our values, they increase going to the south. That is why we are labeling them south of latitude. Then on the extreme longitude, what you need to check there, your degree value is provided. You check on the minute value. This is 22 degrees, 25 minutes to the east. Automatically, the next line is going to be 26 minutes to the east, 27, because in South Africa, our values of longitude, they increase towards the east, and our latitude, they increase going towards the south. So for that reason, you use the northwest corner to pick up your coordinates. You can pick up your values. If you are referring to this block, we pick your coordinates from the northwest corner here. That is your point of reference for features in this block here. Then what you can do if you want to find the value of this one, right, you can use calculations. You measure the distance of latitude and also measure the distance of longitude. What am I saying is you can measure the distance from the upper line of a minute here straight to the distance here if you want to determine your latitude. And you also need to measure the height or the length, or whichever length or breadth, depending on which side is longer, of the whole block. So when you want to identify latitude here for the value of seconds, you say this is x, our value, our distance that you have measured from the onset to the feature, over, maybe let's say it's breadth. So for latitude, we are now saying your measurement is x over the breadth of the block times 60 seconds. You get your value. Let's say, for example, we have measured the distance maybe for the whole block, maybe it's 3 centimeters, and your measurement maybe is 2.5, which means it's 2.5 over 3. You multiply by 60 seconds, you get your value. That is your latitude value. Then, when you want to determine the longitude, you also do the same. You must measure from the onset parallel to your lines of longitude. You measure the distance here from the previous line of longitude going to the feature. You measure the distance. Let's say this is your x that you have measured. And also you need to measure the width, if it is the width of the block, like this. Then let's say this is your width, this is your x. So for longitude, you are now saying, if you want to determine the value of longitude for your minute value, you are now saying you measure the x over the total width of the block you multiply by 60 seconds. You get your value the same way you would get your value for latitude. That is basically the idea that you must use when you are doing those calculations. Right, moving on to the next question. Calculate the area of the symmetry at F in block E2 on the topographic map. Right, let's go to the symmetry and check and calculate it as quick. Right, so what you're supposed to do when you're calculating area, you must check on your measurements and you must be able to identify and convert to the right map scale. We want to use the topographic map for this instance. We want the area of the symmetry in block E2. Right, we'll go to our block. The measurements are already provided. So there's not much need for us to go to the block. Our symmetry is here and the measurements are already there. That's the advantage that we have. If they were not measured, you're supposed to come here, you measure this side. You come this side, you also measure here. Yes, to ascertain your length and your breadth of the symmetry. But in this instance, we have the measurements already, right? It is given that the length is 0.9 centimeters, and this one is 0.8 centimeters. So what you need to do here, you just need to convert these measurements according to the map scale. If you want to do a direct conversion of this measurement in centimeters, and you want to put it in meters, because your answer is supposed to come in square meters. You're supposed to figure out your answer in square meters here. So your measurement for us to get square meters, we can only get a square meter after we have multiplied a meter value by a meter value. So we need to change these measurements to meter values according to the map scale that we are using for that very map. So our map scale is 1:50,000 for the topographic map. And for that reason, if you want to convert to meters, you can simply multiply your centimeter measurement by 500 meters. You multiply this by 500 meters. Then 0.9 times 500 gives you 450 meters. Then 0.8 times 500 is supposed to give you 400 meters. So these are the measurements of the symmetry, 450 and 400 in real. So you come here to get your area is 450 meters times 400 meters. And doing those calculations, you get 180,000 square meters. Done. Right, that is how you calculate. You must be able to familiarize and convert directly and be able to use the right units of measurement for you to get the required set of units. Right, moving on to the next one. The next question. The next question is based on Heather Park. Is it a low income or a high income residential area? This is map interpretation. So under that one, we have to supposed to analyze the area and be able to see on the topographic map. We're supposed to analyze our spaces and be able to check. The question is saying that area hit the park is in block C1 and C2. Right, we come here. Let me just erase off this. C1 and C2, we are seeing our hit the park is here. This is the area of concern. So the question is saying, is it a high or a low? Automatically, this area here constitutes to be a high income area. Why I am saying so? We're going to answer it on the next question. So it's a high income area. Why are we saying it's a high? If you check, there are bigger stands there. The units are big if you try to check. And also if you check, they're not standardized. Standardized, meaning to say they're not the same. Usually when we are having a low income area, the area looks identical, it looks the same. Mainly those are standard core houses. But if you check in that area, they're not standardized. Some of the stands are bigger, some of them are relatively medium size. So it resembles different development capacities of people in high income areas. Then you can also check there are golf courses around. Usually we tend to find golf courses in areas of high income. They are compatible with people of high income. Like if you check, there is this golf estate, then there is also this George golf course. So it's a suggestion that this area is a high income area. Right, move on to the next question. Right, the next question is identify the human made feature at 9 on the orthophoto map. We got the orthophoto map. The feature at 9, right? We check around this area. The human made feature at 9. If you check there and relate it to the topographic map, we are seeing that our mapped area is here and roughly somewhere here. So if we are checking on that, we are saying that is a sewage works. That is a sewage works. Right, so our human-made feature here, we can safely conclude that it's a sewage works. Then give a reason why the rural-urban fringe is suitable. Why do we have sewage in the rural-urban fringe? The problem of smell with the sewage works, it needs to be located a little bit away. And also, there is large space. And also, for the reason that land is cheaper. And basically, those are some of the ideas that we can use. Then identify 2 pieces of evidence that suggest that George is a popular tourist destination. We want to check evidence of tourism in George, right? So we are just going to check on the map and try to figure out evidence, right? When we're looking at tourism, we are looking at facilities that support tourist activities in the area. That is our evidence that we want to check. Right, for the first reason, if we try to check here, we have, if you check closely, we have a holiday resort. And for that reason, the holiday resort, we assume it's a facility supporting tourism activities, right? So if we check the supporting evidence of things like the holiday resort here is one piece of evidence that we can use. And also we can check on, if we try to identify some other pieces of evidence, we can also talk of things like the availability of a landing strip. If we check here, there's also a landing strip, which might be used by the tourists as they are touring the area, as they are visiting the area. It can be evidence of tourism in that particular area. Then we can also check tourists can come for a golf. So we have a number of golf courses and sports grounds which can be effectively utilized by the tourists in the area. So that is some of the evidence that you can use on the map to justify that an area is an area of tourism. We check on other things, on those things, and also you can check on other things like the hotels. If there are a number of hotels in the area, then it suggests that there are people visiting that particular area. Right. We move on to the next question. Right. The next question we need to look at is a question on refer to feature 10 in block C1 on the orthophoto map. The feature on the orthophoto map shows what is the feature that is being shown there on the orthophoto map. We can try to check here. Our orthophoto map, what is it giving us? We want the feature 10. Right, this feature here. That is where 10 is. Right. So if you try to check there, are they trees or they are grasses? If you check in that area, automatically those ones are trees. Those ones constitute to be trees in the area. They cannot be regarded as grasses in the area. So, or crops. These are trees. They are not crops. So give a reason. If you check there, the reason that you can give, some of the things are given as individual points. Some of the trees, they are presented as individual points to show that it's a bigger, like if you check here, it's an individual unit. We cannot have a grass being presented like that or crops being presented like that. These are distinct units. So some of the features are presented as distinct units. And also, if you check the shading, unfortunately, this is a black and white orthophoto map, but the shading, when it's denser, it shows that it's trees. So what you also need to check there, you check on the shading, you see this area is densely shaded. So there is also evidence that those are trees. Check on the shade of the features. And also, right, that basically can be the qualifying the reasons that you can use to suggest that those ones are trees. Right, then we can also move to the next question. Okay, move to the next question. Right, refer to block D3 and D4 on the topographical map. Identify two factors that influence the location of industries in George Industria. We are referring to the topographic map. We want to check on factors promoting industrial development. Right, the area of industries is Georgia Industria, is this area here. What factors are promoting the development of industries? Right, we can talk of transport routes. The transport routes, they are a favoring factor to industrial development. You see this area is well linked with transport routes. So it's factor number one. And then we can also look at the market. These are residential areas. All these are residential areas. They are potential clients for the products from the industry. And also we can talk of labor. All these residential areas, they can supply labor to the industries. And also we can also look at the area basically is flatland. There's flatland for expansion. It's also another factor that can promote industrial development in that area. The area is with flatland where there can be potential for expansion. Then maybe probably we can also talk of raw materials. There can be another favoring factor promoting the industries in that particular area. Right, we move on to the next question. The next question is saying, we are now going to the next question on GIS, which is question 3.3, our last part of the map skills. Right. On GIS, mainly the basic questions are with regards to concepts. Right. So the orthophoto map presents, is it raster or vector data? The orthophoto map is raster data. Why? This one is an image and it's presented in pixels. That is why it's raster. It's a real-time image and is captured using a camera. It has pixels. Right, refer to A5 on the topographical map. State the main data layer that limits the town from developing in this block. Right, number 133, we want to check the area and try to find out what data layer limits the town from developing. Right, if we check on our block A5, right here, this is block A5. If we analyze this block here, we can see the nature of the contour lines. The contour lines are very close to each other. So the data layer there is the topography layer, or we can say the relief of the area, is the one that is restricting the development in that particular direction. And how does this data layer limit development? Right, this steep sloping landscape, the area is steep sloping. And for that reason, being steep sloping, it's expensive to construct in that area. And also it's difficult to develop infrastructure. Infrastructure like roads, like railway networks, they are very difficult to establish in those areas because of the nature of the steepness. Right, then looking at the following question, how does this data layer we've answered? Then refer to G in block C4, C3 on the topographical map. Use the table on the topographical map. Use the table below to match the following information in column A with column B. Right, the first one is saying spatial data. We know what spatial data is. Spatial data deals with the location of a feature. So spatial data is B. This is location. Information on location of a feature in terms of coordinates, our lines of latitude and our lines of longitude. And then attribute data of hospital automatically is A. This is descriptive. It gives further details about a geographical feature. So basically, that is how you can answer those questions. And for that reason, I think we have safely come to the end of our discussion, and I hope it is going to assist you a long way in your studies. Till we meet in other discussions to follow, your host. Thank you. Good day, learners. Welcome to the proposed memo discussion for Geography Paper 2. Right, we are going to go through the paper and try to discuss the possible responses to the given questions. We'll try to justify why we are opting for those responses as the correct responses. And as usual, we understand that our Geography Paper 2 is still has the same format. It comprises of 3 questions. Question number 1, which is settlement geography, and question number 2, economic geography of South Africa. Then question number 3 is geographical skills and techniques, which is our map work out of 30. Right, so we go into our paper and try to check on the questions and try to justify the proposed responses. Right, the first question, question number 1, is based on rural and urban settlements. We are supposed to match column A with column B. Right, the first question is saying, dash refers to the location of a settlement in relation to the surrounding environment. When we are looking at the location of a settlement in relation to the environment, that is the situation of a settlement. That situation, if we are relating how a settlement relates to the surrounding environment, that is situation. Right. For a site, we are looking at the exact ground on which a settlement is established. Right. Moving on to the next question, number 1.1.2. The settlements located in areas where water supply is scarce. Right. What you must note here, we are relating settlements to water. And this situation, our water situation is such that water is a scarce resource in the area. So where must we establish a settlement if water is scarce? The only feasible way of establishing a particular settlement is to try to locate it as close as to the source of water. So that becomes a wet point settlement. Moving on to the next question. The sketch below illustrates a dash rural settlement pattern. Right, when we're talking of pattern, we are looking at how the housing units are arranged in the settlement. Are they closer to each other or they are apart from each other? So if we check in that instance,